So first thing I always ask my audience is to pull out their cell phones and set them on high so that I know who's the most important person in the room. And you know, whoever's phone rings the loudest, I'll know that I'm in good company. Yeah, so I do a couple of jokes. One of the jokes that I like to do is, it's great to be back here today in Stewart. It's been a while since I've been here. Oh, wait a minute. And that's always a really good joke, you know, because a travel writer's kind of supposed to know where he is. So, and then one day I did that joke, I think I was in Roanoke, and I said it about Lynchburg. It's great to be back in Lynchburg again. And that whole room just was really silent. And I said, you know, I did that joke the other day in Bedford. They loved it. So, you know, you gotta kind of assess the crowd. But today I'm going to talk about keepers of the tradition for the most part. I've written 8 books in 9 years. And so Keepers was the, I think the 7th out of 8. And I'm going to briefly show you the other books and a little bit more than briefly read from one of them. But I started my writing career with a book called The Spine of the Virginians. And I've always been intrigued by our odd sibling relationship between Virginia and West Virginia because, you know, people talk about the Carolinas and they talk about the Dakotas. Nobody talks about the Virginias. So that's what that book is about. I wrote that book. From that, come on in please. I fell into a novel. And I never aspired to be a novelist, but I had a story in my mind. And so I write a story. This is about an angry young guy out of Northern Virginia who finds himself an accidental visitor to a little town in West Virginia called Union. And then I wrote this book. It's called Harmonic Highways, and this explores Virginia's crooked road. Hello, please come in. Everybody here in Floyd, of course, is very familiar with the crooked road. But I rode my motorcycle from one end of the crooked road, from Rocky Mount through Floyd, and all the way to Breaks Interstate Park, and wrote about the people, the musicians, the promoters, the instrument makers, the people that I met along the way. Then I got in kind of a novel thing. This is probably my best-selling novel. This is a book called Providence, Virginia. Who knows where Providence is? It's a real place. Does anybody know where Providence is? Where is it? It's on the outskirts of, it's a suburb of Freeze.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, I like to think suburb, you know, Freeze is kind of a suburb of Galax. But Freeze was there long before Galax, so when you say that in Freeze, they don't really like that. Their other joke is F-R-I-E-S. Freeze. Freeze in the winter and fries in the summer. So, but I'll read briefly from that here a little bit. What else did I write? Providence. We're back to Providence. Providence is a story about a 17-year-old rich Jewish girl from New Jersey who comes to the Old Fiddlers Convention in Galax, Virginia. And while she's there performing on stage, we have a complete breakdown of the national power grid. And she is stranded and orphaned and forced to move in with a fire and brimstone primitive Baptist country preacher. She's Jewish. And weather out this national disaster. I wrote War, West Virginia. Who knows where War is? All these books, all the novels are named after real places. They're places with an English language definition. War is in McDowell County, West Virginia, which is the southernmost county. And this is about a coal mine disaster in the coal fields. Hello. And then I wrote Orange. Orange, Virginia is my worst-selling novel. You probably won't like it. It's about politics, and it kind of takes on the idea that the crazies take over. And of course, this was written 5 or 6 years ago, and since then, what we've seen is put most novelists out of business because they can never have anticipated what has actually happened. And Keepers of the Tradition. Keepers is the book I'm going to talk mostly about today. I have a good friend who is an extraordinary portrait artist, and as you can see, she drew these magnificent paintings of local people. And I ran for political office, and I lost. And she was feeling pity on me, and so you know she called. She says Leslie she's got it all. You know, she's very, very talented. She's probably the sweetest person I've ever met. And she called me up to check on me, and you know, I'm like, I'm doing okay. She said, you probably need another project. And so within a 20-minute phone conversation, we decided to do a book together. And And what we would do is focus on local people who were keeping old traditions alive. And so Leslie, she expressed some sadness that she had not written about some people who were doing really cool things in her area where she grew up. She grew up outside Blacksburg in a community called Longshot. And so we sought out quilters and instrument makers, and, well, I'll tell you about them. We did Dudley Scott. Dudley lived down on the New River outside of McCoy, actually in McCoy, Virginia. And he worked on preservation of the coal mine legacy of his family. Bill McDonald. Bill is an old-time, well, Bill is a 7th-generation farmer in Blacksburg. His family predates the Revolution. So Bill is keeping on the farming tradition in our area. Ada Sherman. Ada's passed away. We lost 3 of our keepers since the book was released, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Ada was a gospel singer. And to sit in her living room and have her sing A Closer Walk with Thee a cappella is a moment you will never forget. We wrote about Wayne Henderson. He's probably the most famous guy in our book. How many people know Wayne? Wayne is an instrument maker. Builds guitars down in the Mount Rogers area. And Wayne has a 6-month, no, I'm sorry. Wayne has a 6-year backlog. If you want Wayne to build you a guitar, you be prepared to wait. And he charges whatever he wants. Okay, he's traded guitars for cars, whatever. Sam Steffens. Sam was a resident of Floyd. I think she has moved away, but she was an herbalist. Is she here now?
I've seen her.
Okay. She's an herbalist. By the way, this is special guest Fred First. Fred wrote the introduction to our book, and Fred is a local writer and naturalist, and whatever else you do. What else do you do? That's good. Okay, I'll go with that. Price. Jimmy Price is from a Jimmy Price's family quarried stone out of Brush Mountain, north of Blacksburg, and turned those stones into millstones. So they were in the millstone production business. I'll talk a little bit more about him as well. Kerry Underwood is here in Floyd. He runs the 5 Mile Mountain Distillery. So he's a moonshiner, a modern-day moonshiner. Edwin Lacey. Edwin is a country preacher at a church called Wild Goose Christian Community over in the Indian Valley area. I think he's moved on as well. Pam Frazier. This is Pam. Did any of you know Pam? Pam runs the general store in Mayberry, just the other side of Meadows of Dana. And she is a granny quilter, she will call herself. This was a really neat. Leslie saw fit to drape her in one of her quilts. And her comment to me 6 months after this was done, she said, I'm a big woman. I don't really think of myself as being an attractive woman, but I have never felt prettier than when I saw this portrait. By the way, if you ever want to make a dozen people really happy, okay, get Leslie to draw their portrait and then put them in a book. Okay? And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Who else? Rutledge, Jason Rutledge. Jason is over in the Czech community, and Jason is a restorative forester. And he can take a forest, thin out the trees, pull out the logs with horses, and leave the forest pretty much as he found it, come back 8 or 10 years later, do the same thing all over again, and you never knew it happened, as opposed to the clear cutting that goes on. Arthur Connor was a fiddle maker. We've lost Arthur now too, but he was over in the Czech community as well. And a great guy, one of my favorite people that we met. Just a really good spirit, and just was the kind of guy who just taught himself how to make stuff, you know, and just a very, very talented guy. Dudley Scott. Wait a minute, I think I talked about him. Yes, I did. Oh, Arthur Connor, Dudley Scott, and Ada Sherman have passed away. And of course we miss them, but we take some comfort in knowing that we were able to honor them and tell their stories before they passed. When Leslie and I released this book, we rented out the Alexander Black House in downtown Blacksburg, which is the cultural center of Blacksburg. And it was the largest audience they have ever had. and there were people spilling out of the rooms. Leslie had taken it upon herself to take the originals and put them in quality frames, you know, $300-400 each, and there are a dozen of them, and put them up on the wall, and then gone to a fabric store and bought fabric and draped them, so that when all these people came into the room, they couldn't see them. And then we individually did an unveiling of each one of them, and there were plenty of dry eyes in that room. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. So anyway, I'm going to read a little bit from them. I'm actually going to start not with Keepers of the Tradition, but I'm going to start with this earlier book, Harmonic Highways. And the book is, the chapters in the book are the various towns and cities. And so there is a chapter in here on Floyd County. And there are people in here that all of you will know. I interviewed the folks that put Floyd Fest together. Who else? You know, come on. I don't know. Mac Trainum. Mac is a guitarist, banjo maker. But I'm going to read to you a little section from the Fiddlers Convention. How many people have been to the old Fiddlers Convention in Galax? It's been going on since the dawn of time. What are they in now? Like their 80th year or something?
I was there 40-some years ago.
Yeah, and it was old then, right? They called it the old.
They called it.
I think the day they opened it, they called it the Old Fiddlers Convention, even though it wasn't old yet. I think the word probably describes the fiddlers, although they have young people there as well. But I met a man named Fred Swedberg, who was a regular at the Old Fiddlers Convention in Galax, and he lives in Massachusetts. So he drives everything, you know, a van full of stuff, literally, I think, including the kitchen sink. I think he brings a refrigerator, he brings a sofa, and they just set up for a week. And they just play music with their friends. They see their friends every year.
Didn't one have the tomatoes?
Yeah. Fred was the tomato. You know, Johnny Appleseed was to apples what Fred Swedberg was to tomatoes. And if you ran into Fred, you would not be able to leave his presence without some heirloom tomato seeds. And so he was a big guy. Always wore Hawaiian shirts. He looked like an overgrown leprechaun. You know, he had the red hair and just, you know, the Irish kind of look to it, and he was just a really good soul. And I asked him when I met him that time what he will remember about his trip to Galax. And he said, "There's more gospel being played here than there is in some churches. A lot of this music is theologically correct, wonderfully religious stuff. Weeks from now, I will be having a tough time. I will be involved in some hassle. Even preachers have these moments. And I will say to myself, thank you, Lord. At least I had a week in Galax." This is a mountaintop experience. Mountaintop experiences help you get through the valleys. And I just thought that was so wonderful that, you know, here we are, we live in Southwest Virginia. By the way, one of my favorite expressions is you never ask a fish what water looks like, because they swim in it. You know, we swim in Southwest Virginia. And this is just the background noise of where we are and where we live. But to have somebody who'll drive 600 miles to come down and appreciate what we have in our backyard, I thought was really special. And he passed away, I think, a year or two ago. And it really took the heart and soul. I haven't been good tonight. And I don't know if I'll go to Galax again. You know, he and another friend named Roger Sprung. Roger was a New York banjo player, played back with Kingston Trio. And he put up a sign when he got there, "Sprung is here." And both those guys are gone now. And they were the heart and soul of the Galax experience for me. So, but now I'll move on to excerpts from Keepers of the Tradition. I'm not keeping track of time. Let's see. Oh, we're doing great. The first thing I want to read is here from Pam Puckett Frazier. The lighting's probably not very good up there. Pam has taken it upon herself to go to the old country store in Mayberry. You guys know, is Mayberry a thing? Do we know about Mayberry here? It's a little community the other side of Meadows Dam. Her address there is actually Meadows Game. But I think, my sense here, somebody knows this better than I do, but I think when Andy Griffith wanted his show, it was patterned after Mount Airy, but they named it Mayberry. Is that correct? So, but there is a Mayberry, and it's in Virginia. And I don't care what those people in North Carolina say, it's ours. This store that she is in was built in 1892, and it has been in her family much of the intervening years. And when it fell out of her family, she decided to buy it back. Hello. Please come in. This is Pam Fraser. We're proud people, we're country people, but we're intelligent and well educated. I have letters after my name, but that's not where my pride comes from. Lots of people think mountain folk are ignorant hillbillies. Yeah, I walk around barefoot, but I've also gone to college. We're proud of our heritage. I would love for everybody to hear my family's stories. We are strong, hardworking, knowledgeable people, smart people. My dad and his father were carpenters, good ones. There are homes all over these mountains that they built that are still standing decades later. These people are driven to achieve perfection. These people keep on until they get it right. That's the ethic of these mountain people. I love being part of it. I constantly strive to do better. I want every quilt to be the best I can make it. We all have to start somewhere, but I want every quilt to be better than the one before. When I teach, I instill to my students that they keep trying and trying until they get it right. If I teach people from this area, these mountain folk, they're all driven to perfection. That's how I can tell if they're from here. They're continually wanting to do better. One of the books I found out ended up in the hands of a fellow named Timothy Sands. Does anybody know that name? Timothy Sands is the president of Virginia Tech. Okay? And talk about letters after your name, he's got a string of them. Okay? And he came to us, I think, from Berkeley or Caltech or one of these, incredible universities, and how he's running Virginia Tech. And someone gave him a copy of the book. And I think he grew up in California, and then his last job was at Purdue, I believe, in Indiana, and then he came to Blacksburg. And his comment to this person who gave him the book a week later, and a guy like that takes about 10 minutes to read my book. It's not a lot of words, He said, when I moved here, I knew I was moving to Appalachia, but I didn't know what it was until I read this book. I felt really good about that. I taught the president of Virginia Tech what Appalachia is. So anyway, Leslie did these beautiful portraits, and then I wrote the stories. And one of the beauties of our interaction together is that Leslie is a full-time professional portrait artist. Okay, she makes a living drawing paintings, and she's painted rich and famous people, and she's had a contract, I think, to do Fallon police officers and things like that. And generally her way of doing this is to sit down with a person and just sort of study their movement and watch them and look at them and take pictures of them. And then she goes away and she paints them. But what she told me is, she said, many times when I'm doing this, people are very self-conscious, okay, because they know they're having their portrait done. And she said, working with you was wonderful because I'm focused on my subject. They're focused on me, and she's standing on the side, looking at them, studying how they move. And so it was a really, really good partnership, the way we worked together. So, now I'm going to talk about Arthur Connor. How many people knew Arthur? Yeah, here we go. Tell me about Arthur, Fred.
He was well respected and sounded like a genuine good person.
Yep, yeah. I mean, all of that.
Fred was
talented and
yeah.
long life.
Yeah, long life. I think he was in his 90s. Yeah, outlived at least one wife, maybe two. And just a really, really fun and sweet guy. And a small guy like me. So we kind of saw eye to eye and stuff. And he just teased me incessantly. He was really a funny guy. So, but he had built instruments from scratch for George Strait, Lovett, Joan Baez, Ricky Skaggs, and several people on the Roanoke Symphony. So he built violins, mostly. He also built a couple of violas and some cellos and various other things. I've been a woodland since I came into this world, since I was big enough, I reckon. When I was a boy, there wasn't no electricity. We grew most everything we had to eat. We all had hogs and cows and chickens. We used to order the chickens from Sears and Roebuck. They came in a box, likely 50 or 60. The mail carrier would bring them. Anybody ever had that experience? Really? It's more common than I might think. I grew up right around here, about a mile away as a crow flies. I've been all around the world. I drove over the Himalayas during the Second World War, but I've lived most of my life right here. I built this house from scratch. The Lord showed me how to make fiddles. A guy gave me an expression I'll never forget. We talked about religion. I don't go to church much, but everything you look at is created by the Maker. The birds, the blade of grass, they all depend on Him, the Maker. That guy said, well, the Lord gives you a sack of potatoes. He expects you to keep the weeds out. I thought about that. What that means is that the Lord gives you a little bit, but He expects you to get off your sorry butt and do something with it. The Lord, He gave me the gift that I've had ever since I come into this world. So, I'm sure you guys are getting a sense of how much fun this was, to sit down and talk with these people. And I think a lot of them, some of them are pretty well recognized, like Wayne Henderson. But I think a lot of them is just sort of toiled away in obscurity. And then finally, somebody shows up and wants to interview them and do their portrait and put them in a book. And when Leslie does your portrait, it is a life-changing moment, I think, for most people. So, Edwin Lacey. I don't have a picture of Edwin. Let me find a picture of Edwin for you. Edwin is a Presbyterian minister who formed a church in Indian Valley. He called it Wild Goose Christian Community. He was given a church building by his presbytery, and he took out all the pews and put in rocking chairs. So instead of a bunch of rocking chairs sitting around. And he's a banjoist, and bluegrass music is part of every service. He left the area a few years ago. I'm not sure where he is, but the memory of his banjo playing still really resonates in my ear. I mean, he's an incredible banjo player. And this was one of my favorites of Leslie's portraits. So Edwin said to me, I've always had a deep appreciation of the tradition and have sought as much knowledge about the tradition as I can. But I'm always thinking about what's to come. I'm always looking forward. I'm not a preservationist. I'm indebted to you and thankful for the preservationists, both of the culture and the church. But if you look at history, you will see that the most revered people were the innovators. The people who are the most admired today were the innovators of their day. It appeals to me to be an innovator who builds on the traditions. I'm honored and tickled to have Wild Goose in consideration for your book. Maybe without exception, every book I've ever seen on Appalachian culture is looking backwards. I'm excited about what you're doing because I'm interested, and I know you are, in how these cultures we celebrate fit into a future-oriented society. I always feel that the people who appreciate the traditions are trying to keep alive a dying thing. To some degree that's true, but those traditions are very much alive, as we can see here. They have a life of their own and they will extend into the future. We're not looking to isolate ourselves. We have good degrees from good universities. We have cellular telephones and computers and the internet. We are not isolationists. We've just chosen to live in rural places. Our Appalachian uniqueness is still much about us. The culture endures. Right? So that's how we all understand our culture. How many of you know Jack Hinchelwood? Jack is a former executive director of the Crooked Road and an old friend. We went to high school together. We go way back. Jack said he went to a concert. He was doing a concert. He's a guitarist, and he was doing a concert in Richmond. And somebody there asked him if he was going to do a reenactment. He had to explain that, no, we do this a lot. We do this all the time. This is just modern stuff. So Jason's in the middle, and Jason is quite the character. Jason selected, as I mentioned, he selectively harvests timber and pulls the logs out of the forest using horsepower, real horsepower. Suffolk Punch draft horses, and Jason had a very special relationship with his horses. And I asked him how he lets the horses know what he wants. You know, what are we going to do today? And he says, I come to the field and I tell them. I talk to them. I take a halter and they know what that means. But it is the words and the eye contact. I believe that every instant they are within their senses, they are totally attuned to us. My home is a sunken earth, passive solar home. I'm convinced they are even aware of me when I'm inside. I love these horses like I love my family. No matter how much I think I know them, I'm constantly learning more. They constantly communicate to me how their awareness is different than mine. They see, hear, smell, and feel like differently than we do. They are prey animals and they constantly communicate with each other. I am convinced that they can read my mind, and they often prove that they know what I want them to do before I even ask them. I embrace that, and I love that. I stay open to them teaching me, and they teach me every day. I love these horses, and they know I love them. I was talking to somebody about that, someone else I knew who had been involved with draft horses, and he hitched up the horses to go out and plow the field or cut the ground. I don't know exactly what it was, but the horses got to the edge of the field, and they had significant rain that week, and he said the horse got to the edge of the field and wouldn't budge. And he's like, well, yeah, it's too wet to plow. You know, the horses knew that, but they had to tell him that. Carrie Underwood, not that Carrie Underwood, but the one here. Do you guys know Carrie? Anybody know Carrie? He used to run the restaurant. Odd Fellows. Right. And now he runs what's called the 5 Mile Mountain Distillery. And it's on 221, just out there. If you go back into town, make a left, it's there on the left. It's the old water plant, I think, isn't it? Yeah, the old water plant. So he told me that his family on his father's side immigrated from England and settled in Floyd in 1787. He initially leased land from White Horse Harry Lee, the father of Robert E. Lee. Harry had been given the land as a grant from King George II. They settled over near the Buffalo long before the town of Floyd even existed. And so I asked him about his new moonshine venture. You know, because the state of Virginia said, okay guys, we're not going to put you in jail anymore for moonshine. Like, old timers, like, really? We can actually do this now? And you know, anyway, so Carrie said, we are employing traditional methods, including having an open flame. The main ingredient is cornmeal. We source that from a local company in Montgomery County. We cook the cornmeal, add sugar, add yeast, and it's about a 5-day process. It turns into what is called steel beer. We pour the liquid off and then the mash. We put it into the still and cook it for about 8 hours, and then it will yield a product that is about 160 to 170 proof. That's strong stuff. That will run a car. We dilute it to 100 proof and 80 proof. What the old-timers sold in the woods was about 95 to 100 proof. Franklin County, since the 1930s, to make and sell moonshine. Legal. It's something I thought was a harebrained scheme, but my partner and many others thought it was viable. It suits Floyd. Lots of heads bouncing up. It's part of our culture and tradition. Even the locals, the old-timers, are proud to see it happen. So, and then there's another part of the book where he's talking to one of these old-timers and he's bringing them over to the still, and the old-timers like, oh no, I'm not going to, no, you're going to do that legally. You know, they're going to come after us. So, anyway, it took him a long time to adjust the idea that you can actually do this legally, and we're going to arrest you for it. Ada Sherman. I don't have, let me get a picture of Ada. Ada I spoke about a minute ago, our gospel singer. My favorite hymn is A Closer Walk with Thee. And she was doing it on her piano, and I couldn't hear her voice. And I said, would you please just do an a cappella? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, please. Just a closer. Anyway, goosebumps still. She was incredible. So, I asked her about, she grew up in Radford, and I asked her about her upbringing there, and she said about her parents. They taught us to be honest. They told us not to steal anything, not even a safety, even if we were hungry. Mom told us not to steal food. She said if you ask somebody, I believe they will give you some food. She said don't never mistreat nobody. Don't never make fun of nobody. My parents, they planted those seeds. But I want to tell you something. I'm so happy to be black. God don't make any mistakes. He made every last one of us. He created every nation under the heavens. If your blood is AB positive, and my blood is AB positive, we can give each other blood. When we get blood, they have to put on it. This blood is from a black person or a white person. For 210 years, Jimmy Price, the family of Jimmy Price, quarried and shaped millstones from the slope of Rush Mountain in Montgomery County. Jimmy wrote, I think, what became really the watchwords of this book. So, before I read to you, we went up onto the quarry, up onto the mountain, and there were still stones laying around. You could see a couple of broken stones, that they quarried out and began to carve, and the broken was left. But these guys would work every day, 9 to 5, or whatever their hours were, and hike up on the mountain, and they carve out this, it's called burstone, B-U-H-R, burstone. And they would carve this out of the mountain, and then shape it into these millstones. And they had to be balanced, because they're spinning. And they look like a car tire. They had to be balanced. And they were shipping these all over the East Coast. And production went on for 210 years. Imagine sitting down today and drawing up a business plan for a business that would endure for 210 years. So it was like from 1740 until 1950. And that's when they shut down. And you still will see millstones. There are millstones all over the place now. My people cut the stone, ground the flour that fed our region. My people cut the stone that built Virginia Tech. That stone signifies endurance. For education to endure, you need an enduring facility and campus, and you need enduring traditions. That stone supports the education, but also supports the tradition. Here we go. Ready? Tradition is the glue that adheres cultures and civilizations and the things that we know and care about. When you lose the tradition, you lose the glue. Thank you all very much. Be happy to answer any questions. I'll also go around to sign books if anybody's interested in the book. And appreciate everybody spreading the word. How many of you have actually read one of my books before? Anyone? Just these guys. Wonderful. So anyway, you'll like them. If you don't like them, double your money back, or maybe half your money back. If you do like them and you want to tell the world, that's pretty fine too. So again, I appreciate it. Any questions?
What's your favorite book?
The last one.
Why?
Because you always think you got better than the time before. This book, Chasing the Powhatan Arrow. How many people know about the Powhatan Arrow? Anybody? Oh gosh. It was a long time ago. Back in the heyday of passenger rail, you could take a train from Norfolk, Virginia, through Roanoke, through Christiansburg, and over to Harrisburg, and ultimately all the way to Cincinnati, Ohio. When they left Norfolk, they named their trains that way. They still do. The Cardinal, and the Empire Builder. The City of New Orleans is the name of the train. Arlo Guthrie's famous song. The Norfolk and Western named one of their trains the Powhatan Arrow. They actually had a contest to name this train, and the guy who won it, I think, got a free ride on it or something. I don't know what he got exactly. But anyway, this is a travel log. And it's about the people, the history, the culture, the geography, and especially the economy of the communities that the Powhatan era used to go through. How many Native Virginians in here? Okay, many of you. So when I mention these cities and towns, Norfolk, Suffolk, Petersburg, Blackstone Crew, Farmville, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Christiansburg, Harrisburg, Bluefield, Welch, Williamson, Canova, Ironton, Portsmouth, and Cincinnati. That's where the train went. And some of these towns and cities are doing quite well. Christiansburg is a vibrant place. People are moving in all the time. Lynchburg is doing well. Welch, West Virginia. How many people have been to Welch lately? Welch is not doing well. Welch is the county seat of McDowell County, West Virginia. In 1950, before I was born, McDowell County had 99,000 people in it. That's as many as Montgomery County has. Okay, today, McDowell County has 18,000 people. Over 80% of the population has moved away. And so I wrote about why communities are successful. And people, as we know, make good and bad health decisions all the time. You drink, you smoke, whatever. Businesses make good and bad health decisions. And what I learned is that communities make good and bad health decisions. And so I was interested in how these have progressed. But I interviewed 95 people for this book. And so I met a great-granddaughter of Devil Anse Hatfield in the Hatfield-McCoy clan. Okay. I'm a good Christian woman, but I pack heat. I met a hobo. I met a guy who spent 10 years riding the rails, riding the boxcars, modern day hobo. It was a lot of fun. Other questions? Again, I'll hang around. Please let me know. I'll be up here, so come on up and say hello.